Single dad got stuck with the CEO, what he did in the elevator. Changed to 3B Smart Building. The Pinnacle Tower stood like a glass monument to the future. 73 floors of algorithmic perfection, where artificial intelligence controlled everything from the temperature to the timing of coffee breaks. Marcus Chen, the billionaire CEO of Tech Vault Industries, had built this $3 billion smart building as proof that human error could be eliminated, that efficiency could be perfected, that technology could solve every problem. He walked through his empire every morning at exactly 7:15, surrounded by engineers and executives who nodded at his every word, their tablets glowing with real-time data streams that predicted and controlled every aspect of the building's operation. Marcus believed in systems, in data, in the cold certainty of machines. He had no time for inefficiency, no patience for the unpredictable nature of human judgment. That morning, as he stepped into the executive elevator on the ground floor, he was reviewing the quarterly reports on his phone, barely noticing the other person who slipped in just before the doors closed. The man wore a maintenance uniform with grease stains on the sleeves and carried a worn toolbox that looked older than the building itself. His name tag read Daniel Torres, and beneath it, in smaller letters, Facilities Maintenance. Marcus didn't look up. People like Daniel were invisible to people like Marcus, part of the machinery that kept things running, noticed only when something broke. The elevator began its smooth ascent, climbing toward the executive suite on the 72nd floor, when suddenly the lights flickered. The smooth hum became a grinding whine. Then, with a shudder that sent both men grabbing for the handrails, everything stopped. The emergency lights came on, casting the small space in a dim red glow. Marcus immediately pressed the emergency call button, his jaw tight with irritation. A synthetic voice responded with unsettling calm. Emergency system engaged. All elevators are currently non-operational, due to a building-wide system failure. Estimated time to resolution unknown. Please remain calm. Marcus tried his phone, no signal. The building's entire network was down. For the first time in years, Marcus Chen was trapped powerless in a 6-by-8-foot box suspended somewhere between the ground and the sky. He looked at Daniel for the first time, really looked at him, and saw a man in his late 30s with tired eyes and calloused hands, sitting calmly on the floor of the elevator, his back against the wall. "This is unacceptable," Marcus said, more to himself than to Daniel. "A $3 billion building and we're stuck in an elevator like it's 1985. Daniel smiled slightly, a sad kind of smile that suggested he'd heard this sort of thing before. "Sometimes the fancier the system, the harder it falls," he said quietly. "When everything's connected, one failure can bring down the whole thing." Marcus bristled. "Our systems have redundancy upon redundancy. This shouldn't be possible." Daniel nodded, not argumentatively, just acknowledging. Should and is are two different things. There was something in his tone. Not disrespectful, but not deferential either. That made Marcus pause. He studied the maintenance worker more carefully. "You work here?" "In facilities." 5 years, Daniel said. "Mostly night shifts. But they asked me to come in early today to check on some sensor anomalies in the HVAC system." Marcus felt the familiar irritation rising. If there were anomalies, why wasn't I informed? Why weren't they fixed before they became a problem? Daniel met his eyes directly, and Marcus saw something unexpected there. Not fear or deference, but a quiet kind of knowing. "I wrote 17 reports in the last 3 months, Daniel said. "About sensor drift. About the predictive algorithms making decisions faster than the mechanical systems could respond. About maintenance schedules being optimized by AI. That didn't account for real-world wear and tear. The system kept marking them as low priority. Eventually, they stopped going through at all." Marcus felt something uncomfortable twist in his chest. "That's impossible. Our oversight protocols are handled by the same AI that's currently failing." Daniel finished gently. "Mr. Chen, can I tell you something? I've worked in buildings for 15 years. Started as a janitor, worked my way up to chief maintenance tech at my last job. Lost that position when the company automated, This building, it's beautiful. It's brilliant. But it's designed by people who never had to fix anything with their own hands. The AI optimizes for efficiency, but it doesn't understand that sometimes a pipe needs to be checked, not because the data says it's failing, but because you can hear it groaning in a way that means trouble's coming. Marcus wanted to argue, wanted to dismiss this as the perspective of someone who didn't understand the bigger picture, but something stopped him. Maybe it was being trapped, vulnerable, dependent on rescue from systems he'd always taken for granted. Maybe it was the calm in Daniel's voice, the absence of resentment or anger. "You have a family?" Marcus asked, changing the subject, unsure why. Daniel's face softened. "A daughter, Emma, she's 7. Loves drawing, wants to be an architect. I'm raising her on my own." "I'm sorry," Marcus said, and was surprised to find he meant it. "It's why I work nights mostly," Daniel continued. "Day shift pays better, but night shift means I can take her to school in the morning, pick her up in the afternoon. I sleep while she's at school. It's not perfect, but we make it work." Marcus thought about his own children, barely seen between business trips and 16-hour workdays, raised more by nannies and boarding schools than by him. "That must be difficult." Daniel shrugged. "You do what you have to do. Emma's worth every tired morning." They sat in silence for a while, and then Daniel opened his toolbox. Marcus watched as he pulled out a small notebook, worn and filled with handwritten notes, sketches, observations. "What's that?" Marcus asked. "My real reporting system," Daniel said with a slight smile. "When the digital reports stopped going through, I kept track the old way. Temperatures, vibrations, unusual sounds. Patterns the AI missed because they didn't fit the expected parameters." He flipped through pages covered in careful handwriting, detailed drawings of pipe connections and ventilation routes. "See, the AI predicted this system would run perfectly for another 18 months before any major maintenance. But I could feel it struggling. The building breathes differently when something's wrong." Marcus found himself leaning forward, looking at the notes. They were meticulous, thoughtful, the work of someone who genuinely cared about keeping things running. Not for glory or recognition, but because it mattered. "Why didn't you push harder?" Marcus asked. "Escalate beyond the automated systems?" Daniel looked at him with those tired, knowing eyes. "Mr. Chen, do you know how many people like me work in this building? Maintenance, cleaning, security, food service. Hundreds. And do you know how many times in 5 years any executive has asked me a direct question about how the building actually runs? This is the first." The words hit harder than any board criticism ever had. Marcus had built an empire on the idea that data and algorithms could replace the messiness of human input, that perfect systems could run themselves. But here, trapped in his own creation, he was confronting the possibility that he'd built something beautiful that didn't actually work. "If you could fix this," Marcus said slowly, "if you could redesign how this building operates, what would you do differently?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. He thought about it, the same way he probably thought about his daughter's future, with care and seriousness. "I'd keep the AI," he said finally. "It's incredible for optimization, for data analysis, but I'd have it work with people, not instead of them. I'd have a system where human observations could override automated decisions, where someone like me could flag something as urgent and have it actually matter. I'd build in what my old mentor used to call wisdom delays moments, where the system has to pause and let a human being look at the situation before it acts. Efficiency is good, Mr. Chen, but resilience is better. And resilience comes from having people in the loop who understand that not everything that matters can be measured." Marcus sat back against the elevator wall, his $3,000 suit crumpling, and for the first time in years he listened, really listened. They talked for the next 2 hours as rescue crews worked to restore power and override the failed systems. Daniel told him about the building's quirks, about the spots where the AI's confidence exceeded its understanding, about the dedicated people working night shifts and weekends to keep the gleaming tower running despite being treated as replaceable parts in a larger machine. Marcus told Daniel about the pressure of running a company, about the loneliness of decisions that affected thousands of lives, about his own father, who had been a factory worker and would probably have had more in common with Daniel than with the man Marcus had become. When the elevator finally lurched back to life and the doors opened to a crowd of anxious executives and rescue personnel, Marcus stepped out a different man than the one who had stepped in. He held the elevator door and offered his hand to Daniel. "Come with me," he said, "to the executive floor. We have work to do." In the weeks that followed, the Pinnacle Tower underwent a transformation. Marcus created a new position, Chief of Human Systems Integration, and offered it to Daniel at a salary that would let him work normal hours and spend evenings with his daughter. Daniel accepted, but only after securing positions for a team of veteran facilities workers who would work directly with the AI systems. Their experience and observations given equal weight to sensor data. The building's operating system was redesigned with human veto points, where experienced staff could override automated decisions. Maintenance reports were reviewed by actual people, not just algorithms. The perfect efficiency dropped by 3%. The building's resilience and safety increased by 200%. Marcus began walking the building differently, not just touring the executive floors, but visiting maintenance spaces, talking to security guards, asking questions of the people who actually kept the tower running. He learned their names, their challenges, their insights. The culture of Tech Vault Industries began to shift. The story of the elevator spread through the company, embellished and retold, but at its core carrying a simple truth, that the person you overlook might be the one with the answer you need, that wisdom doesn't always wear a suit, and that the most sophisticated system in the world is still built, maintained, and ultimately depends on human hands and human hearts. Daniel's daughter Emma, who loved to draw, created a picture that Marcus framed and hung in his office. A tall building with visible people inside every floor, all connected not by wires and algorithms, but by simple lines of care and attention. Each person seeing and being seen. Years later, when Marcus was asked about the turnaround of Tech Vault Industries, about how they'd gone from a company obsessed with automation to one known for integrating human wisdom with technological power, he told the story of being stuck in an elevator with a single dad who carried a worn notebook and understood what all his data had missed, that the goal wasn't to eliminate the human element, but to honor it. The best systems, Marcus learned, aren't the ones that run without us, but the ones that run with us, that amplify our strengths and compensate for our weaknesses, that recognize that grease stains and calloused hands often indicate not someone who couldn't do better, but someone who chose to do what mattered. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that everyone has value and everyone deserves to be seen, please like, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Your support helps us share more stories about compassion, dignity, and the quiet heroes who change the world, one small act at a time. Thank you for being part of this community of kindness.